critical thinking skills are more important today than ever. If we look at how the 20th century education set people up, they would say they were teaching critical thinking skills, but for the most part, they taught what I'm seeing in my own experience with AI is AI can get you 80 or 90% of the way there. For somebody who really doesn't know what they're doing, they think it's 100% of the way there. I'm watching people publish books. They're 100% AI written. And you look at them, you're like, yeah, those three thoughts didn't quite work together. This was written by AI. And so what I have found AI is really useful for, especially in writing, because that was the example you gave, is it's a really good way to break the writer's block, to get you moving in a direction. But you can still tell very clearly when a human has been involved and they've raised the thinking of the content, they've raised the writing skills of it. You can tell when that's been involved versus when someone just put a prompt in, let it go, hit copy, and pasted it. So here's the big question. How do everyday people like us who didn't grow up wealthy and were not taught how to be wealthy in school, how are we supposed to learn to think, invest, and grow wealth like the top 1% without compromising our ethics and our values? My name is Jeremy Whaley. That was my big question. This podcast will give you the answers. You're listening to Think Rich Radio. And welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of Think Rich Radio. I'm your host, Jeremy Whaley, with my co-host, Nelson Bran. Good morning, Nelson.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. For our listeners at home and in their cars and wherever they're listening, hopefully things sound a little different. We are trying some new technology today. Let us know what you think. Audio should be better. Hopefully video is a little better. And we are going to keep improving our show. Nelson, today we are talking about institutional change, how the world is changing, how institutions are changing. And just kind of as a pre-frame to an episode we did about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the fourth turning. We talked about, in the concept of the fourth turning, how old institutions die and new institutions are born. And before we went live, you and I were talking about how that's affecting education, and specifically how corporations are now looking at non-traditional education outlets instead of higher education. So there's the tee off. Why don't you take it from there?
I'll tell you, Jeremy, that's one of the big reasons why we started DeltaChainLabs.com. DeltaChainLabs.com is the umbrella. It's the mother of Delta Chain Labs Academy. And at some point, we're going to have Delta Chain Labs RWA for real world assets, Delta Chain Labs Finance, Delta Chain Labs, just a variety of other subgroups under the umbrella of Delta Chain Labs. But we went ahead and started the academy specifically in response to the universities and the schools are moving very, very slowly in the education of digital assets and artificial intelligence. So we thought there's a real gap there. Now we've seen that there's a lot of academies/universities out there right now that are attempting to fill that space, to fill that cavity. At the same time, there's new startups, and all of them seem to want to have a university component to them so that they can go ahead and turn to their community and give them some level of education as they onboard them onto whatever their product line is. And so in response to those things, we've gone ahead and created Delta Chain Labs Academy. To your point, my son's going to a university, and he says to me, Dad, in our particular club, he's part of a coding club, the university came to them and said, our audience is decreasing per semester. So far, we've had 8 semesters in a row where the population of students is continuing to fall semester after semester. And they were tasked with come up with a solution, because what the university is doing is they're negotiating the salaries of the professors and they're cutting back on their hours. And I told my son, I said, until the university has an advent like Delta Chain Labs Academy, where the student body can learn from their home and learn at their pace and be comfortable, as opposed to going to a building that requires maintenance and management and insurance and employees and so forth. Unless the university can do that, there's no way it can continue, because it's simply too expensive. Now, in our case, when we add the earn to learn tokenization, where you're getting tokens for learning, For every quizzes that you take successfully, you're going to earn tokens. And we're going into that tokenomics now. A person will literally be able to get paid back a portion of their semester. Maybe it's a fourth, or maybe it's half of their semester costs. So you'll literally be paid to learn.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that is absolutely, from a gamification standpoint, where everything has to go. I think from a functional standpoint, it just absolutely makes sense. You said a couple of interesting things that I want to tap into. Of course, I think you know this. My father's been in higher education for almost 50 years, like 48, 49 years. And so I've been around it my whole life. The online learning at home dynamic, that has been in place now for, it's pretty old, 15 years, 20 years. We've got some institutions like University of Phoenix, for example, comes to mind, that are huge, hundreds of thousands of online learners. That dynamic higher education has adapted to. But what higher education has not been able to adapt to is keeping up with what's current, keeping up with what's relevant for right now. And I'm going to use a couple of examples from my own life. Number one, let's start with digital marketing. I've done a lot of online business for the last 15 years. So obviously online marketing is a dynamic of that. And I've gone to several marketing seminars where over a 3 or 4 day event, we will learn 8, 10, 12 hours a day in a room. We will learn more in those 4 days than a person can learn in an entire semester of college. But it's happening in a compacted period of time. It's happening from people that are cutting edge, front world, real-time results. And it's a level of information that higher education cannot adapt to fast enough. And that's what I'm seeing. The delivery mechanism, higher education has kind of figured out. My last experience, it was still really clunky. But the ability to have current, cutting edge information has not been there. And sticking with digital marketing for a second, what I've learned in some of these events we've gone to is the entire landscape of digital marketing changes about every 18 months. So what was working 18 months ago does not work today. Well, if you think about a kid or an adult going into college, if it's a 4-year degree, by the time they graduate with their marketing degree, the entire landscape has changed twice in that 4 years. How can a higher education keep up with that? That's my question.
I don't believe it can, and it cannot because of the way that the processes within the university are the way they're laid out. It can't be nimble because it's too large. To your point, there are fads and there are trends in the digital market space that are occurring right now where there's something new or something interesting every 2 to 3 weeks. And as artificial intelligence comes into play, sometimes it's every other day. Look at just the competing software and applications just related to AI. I mean, there's something new every 2 to 3 weeks. So, but I love this moment in time at the same time because it allows for the average person, you and I or anyone else, to put together an individual or a small group. And because it's an agentic moment where I may not know how to code, Jeremy, but I can certainly prompt an AI to prompt another AI to ultimately create what I'm looking for. And so through that, I as an individual can compete with multinational corporations because now the small guy has tools at his disposal that he's able to do some monumental things from his home every single day without the need of having to get up and get dressed and go to a university. And going back to your point, by the time that semester is over, that tuition's been paid, and someone could have been home learning that within 2 or 3 days as opposed to going through an entire semester at a university.
Absolutely. And a big component of what you're discussing is solving for the factor of speed. What we'll call this the 21st century education, the situation that it's facing versus 100 years ago, 20th century education. 100 years ago, we were, following World War II, we were making that transition from the industrial age over into what became the 20th century, which was the age of corporation, the age of the big company, the age of all the expansion that we had over the last 100 years. But now we're moving into this new age that we've referred to as the age of decentralization. And the themes are decentralization, number one, but speed. What AI is providing is it's providing speed. What online learning is providing is it's providing speed in ways that the old institutions cannot keep up with. And so when we think about agents, for example, let's stick with this inside of a business structure. If somebody were to put together, a team, a virtual team, legit, when I say virtual, it's an artificial virtual team of AI agents to help run their business, they can have unlimited scalable employees in the form of agents running something like OpenClaw. You don't even have to have a Mac Mini to run it. You can run it on a cloud. And a business can literally build an entire workforce over a week or two, have it all up and running, have it trained. And that's a workforce that, up until the last 2 years, really, you could even say the last year, it would have taken $20 to $50, $100,000 a month to employ. That's the speed with which we can move now. So now if you look at the education angle, education's got to be able to keep up with that. And they can't, because it just moves at the speed of molasses.
It does. And I'll tell you, right now we're at that point where very soon we're about to see a single entrepreneur, a single owner, a single person for a corporation, an entity that becomes a billionaire because he employs a bunch of agents. And he's got prompts going to prompts going to prompts, and we're about to see that. It's going to be the next entrepreneurial stage of our lives where, and it's interesting because simultaneously jobs are going to become lesser and lesser out there in the real world, maybe even lesser paid. And so people are going to be forced to have to become entrepreneurs. We're all going to be forced to have to say, okay, how can I serve the marketplace? What am I good at? And so universities, they can't go in that direction because they're stuck. They have tenured professors, they have a system, they have hours, they have summer vacations, they have particular classes and class hours. And even though that model was very comfortable for the previous generations, it's no longer applicable, to your point, because of the rate of velocity that things are coming out. Nowadays, what might have taken a whole team to do within 2 weeks, one person during their lunch hour sitting in front of a computer can bust it out. So it's changing everything. And it isn't limited to velocity, because these agents are able to produce quality work insofar as art, marketing, writing, video making, etc., on and on. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, you said a couple of things I'd like to tap into. This may be a split in rabbit trails here, but one is everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, which I totally agree with. And the first single owner billionaire, which I think that should be you and me, Nelson. I think we should have a competition. We should run, and you and I should both set a billion as our target. But let's go over to what does that actually look like? Because I've been thinking a lot about this. One of the challenges that I've had is there is a velocity of business that we do when we have partners. And when we're on our own, a lot of times those ideas just can't flow as well. I really love working with AI. AI stimulates and triggers a lot of ideas for me, but I get a lot more traction when I'm talking with you. And that's a different dynamic. We talk about the solopreneur who could be the solo billionaire, which is awesome. But at the same time, can we simulate that dynamic that human to human interaction has? That's one thought. I want you to respond to that. The other thought I want to come back to is AI going to help us, or is it going to hurt us? And that may be too big of a rabbit trail, but I want to come back to I want to start here with your feedback on this idea, the dynamic of two humans interacting, giving ideas, feeding back off of each other.
If you and I can agree that there are a multitude of ideas out here in this ether, and as you and I are speaking through an idea, we grab it and we input it verbally into what we're thinking, and then we start manifesting towards it. What actions do we need to take to make that happen immediately, right? And so if we can agree that that is the case, that whether it's in a group of two or more, that people are able to brainstorm and collectively come up to these amazing ideas, because there's some consciousness up here that we're all able to tap. If I'm in front of my computer, I can't do that as readily because ideas open up because they're bouncing off one another. I'm going to say one more thing regarding this human element portion of it. On Delta Chain Labs Academy, if you go through our academy, it is modules, it is quizzes, and then there's a conversational piece thereafter to ensure that you've actually learned the material. But one of the reasons that on our community side we're having pre-recorded videos, live Zooms with yourself, in fact, as a part of it, we have our industry experts, is because we understand that we need the human element in the entire idea as well. It can't simply be a computer to human idea. We're actually also going to bring in this ability to study with other people while you're studying subject matter. You can be talking and engaging on a chat while you're busy studying a particular subject. So we want to bring the human element into it because although the digital makes us more efficient, makes us faster, makes things flow smoother, it's missing that human element that we all need no matter.
Absolutely. And that's really kind of what I'm getting at is there's a dynamic, there's an energetic velocity that comes from human to human interaction that AI doesn't quite capture. And if you and I, for example, are on the phone or if we're on a podcast together and we start talking about some ideas, like sometimes I just hang up with you and I'm like, oh, I got this great idea. And, just that the mere fact of human to human interaction created a momentum and it created a higher energy field. I'm concerned that we're going to start to lose some of that, but I think the alternative is we get really focused on building these online communities. Online communities, I think, is the balance where we bring in what AI and digital and technology can do for us, but we still create an environment where humans are connecting with each other. Because, if we're not human, what are we? We're the species we're the alien species that has to go to other planets to study humans.
I'll tell you, the competitive nature of yesterday has been replaced with a collaborative moment. When right now, it's all collaboration. Everything's collaboration. Anyone who still says what I know is mine and I'm not going to share it, or the contacts that I have are mine alone and they're not here for me to share them with the general public, that idea is dead. I think this digital forces us to be more collaborative in nature. And if we're not, I don't see how we can move ahead. I think we need that as a necessary screws that hold the whole thing together is what I see. You had another question. You said, are the machines, are they good or bad? Was that your question?
Yeah, I wanted to talk, a lot of people say, for example, I'll talk to my father. My father's 76, show him some stuff we're doing with AI. I showed him some stuff with the agents, and his response was, that's spooky. I was like, why is it spooky? And so I see, what I'm starting to see is there's a disconnect. A lot of humans look at the AI component and they say that it's going to replace me, it's going to replace humans, it's going to become everything sterile, blah, blah, blah. And I do think there's a real argument to be made there. But another similar transition that I experienced, and I'll throw this out there. Most people that know me know, I started my adult life as a professional musician. And when I was in college working on my music degree, I happened to be on the cutting edge. Now, this was in the 90s, so this was 30 years ago. But I was on the cutting edge with technology, and some of the musical technologies that we were using at the time, such as sampling and, what people would consider artificial, the Musicians Union was very scared of it. When we came out with these huge string libraries that you could use to mock up an entire orchestral film score, and you could do it without hiring a single orchestral player, the string players freaked out. All the orchestra players freaked out. And they said, it's going to take our jobs. Well, what ended up happening? Fast forward, did it take the jobs? To some degree, maybe some. But what it also did is it gave composers an outlet where they could do a mock-up of a full orchestration and sell it to a film director. And the film director could hear what it would sound like and look like with the film. And then they could sign off on it and say, hey, go to the studio and record this with the live orchestra. So we didn't replace live orchestra for film recordings or for many of the other recordings that we would have done. Instead, we augmented it. And so what the technology did is it actually made it more efficient. It made the budgets more efficient. It allowed people to put technology and sounds into recordings that before they wouldn't have been able to do. And as a whole, I think the music industry was better because of it. That's an example of where technology threatened an industry. And 30 years later, we look back and we say, I think it was for the good. I think that's the way AI is going to play out for everything as well. What say you?
I think the same way that universities and schools have to, if they want to survive, have to be nimble. They have to be flexible. They have to be current on trends and fads and tailor their education to their community and to the general public and to the marketplace. And that's where, again, the smaller ideas will be able to pivot. And not everybody likes the word pivot, Jeremy, but I think it's crucial. I think it's important. The smaller ideas, the smaller entities, the solopreneurs are going to be able to pivot in ways that the larger conglomerates cannot. An example of that, and by the way, that applies to human beings as well, to individuals. Because, Jeremy, if I'm going to be online and have the AI constantly writing on my behalf, I'm going to lose that capacity. If I have the AI doing everything on my behalf and I think my life is easier for it, it's not true. Because my thinking will go away, my ability to write will go away, my ability to speak will go away. And so we as individuals have to also pivot to the marketplace and be learning all those things that are crucial for the next stage, right? I'll leave it at that.
Sorry, was that mid-thought on you?
Well, I'm going to leave it at that. I got something else to add, but go ahead and condense.
Yeah, I really agree with what you just said there. Critical thinking skills are more important today than ever. If we look at how the 20th century education set people up, they would say they were teaching critical thinking skills, but for the most part, they taught repetition, just consistent repetition. Do it over and over and over. And as long as you can regurgitate the right answer, you win. You get an A. What we didn't put enough attention on in the 20th century was critical thinking. And so you only had a few areas of education that were really, truly thinking outside of the box. Most people were just simply saying, what are the checks that I need to check off? What are the marks I need to check off? And that's why today you have a lot of people that are struggling with the change because they didn't really learn how to think through it. What I'm seeing in my own experience with AI is AI can get you 80 or 90% of the way there. For somebody who really doesn't know what they're doing, they think it's 100% of the way there. I'm watching people publish books. They're 100% AI written. And you look at them, you're like, yeah, those three thoughts didn't quite work together. This was written by AI. Whereas what I can do with AI is I can have it put something together. And because I have critical thinking skills, not to brag, but I have a couple, I'll read through it. And before I know it, I've made changes to 70% of it. But what AI did is it got you a starting point. And so what I have found AI is really useful for, especially in writing, because that was the example you gave, is it's a really good way to break the writer's block to get you moving in a direction. But you can still tell very clearly when a human has been involved and they've raised the thinking of the content, they've raised the writing skills of it. You can tell when that's been involved versus when someone just put a prompt in, let it go, hit copy, and pasted it.
There's no doubt. You lose that conversational, informal, human capacity in the writing. I feel, Jeremy, as though we've given up the critical thinking for entertainment. I feel like nowadays we're no longer solving for value or wisdom. We're solving to be entertained. We've come to this conclusion that the goal of life is to be entertained. And I feel as though at some point, maybe sometime in the late 80s, we shifted from a citizen to a consumer. And as a consumer, as long as everything remained affordable for us to purchase, we gave up a lot of sovereignty. We gave up that whole citizenship. And as a consumer now, we judge one another based on the things that we can purchase. I see online how people advertise the things that they bought, the things that they own, the places they've been, the things that they're eating. And so now we're a product-based consumer, and that's all we have to show for it. And at some point, and this ties back to, we've given away that pursuit of truth, or pursuit of wisdom, or pursuit of something bigger and better for entertainment and for the accumulation of commodities, of goods, And it's odd, Jeremy, because we're in a time when I don't know if we've ever had as much as we have today, insofar as technology, insofar as goods and material things. And yet I think we're also in one of the most depressed moments of the human existence. What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. And I think that's been created by whatever forces. I don't know what the forces are specifically that have created that environment. Call it government forces, call it, the elite, whatever you want to call it. But it's the combination of dumbing down society, pairing with that, the dumbing down of the quality of education, not education, entertainment. The entertainment that we have today is not the same level of entertainment that you and I experienced in the 1980s. That's why 50 years later, you pop in Back in Black and it sounds more current and better today than music that they produced last week. Because entertainment today is not the same level. We had much better movies in the 80s than we have today. So they've dumbed down entertainment. They've dumbed down our money. You think about inflation, what did they do? They dumbed it down. So whoever's in charge of creating trends has been creating the trends of dumbing it down. That's the bad news. The good news is we have the same access to communicate today. We have the same access to connect with people, actually more access today than we've ever had. And we have the ability to go out and create a community of our own. We have the ability to connect around the world that fast. You and I could both go out this afternoon, start a new LLC, and by the end of this week, be an international business with customers around the globe. That's an extraordinary opportunity. And so, it's like they always say, with great opportunity comes great responsibility. I think where society has slipped is we haven't taken advantage of the responsibility part. We have the opportunity to go do, be, and have anything that we want. And what AI is doing, what technology is doing, is it's making that accessible for us. But as a society, the conversation that I think we have to have is, hey, where do we step up and steward this opportunity? Because we got to go do it. We can be smarter today than we could have ever been before, or we could be dumber. We can expand faster than ever before, or we can go internal and be introverted and contract. We get the choice.
I'll tell you, Jeremy, tools without discipline is a tragedy waiting to happen. And so you're right. It does seem as though society as a whole, we've all been dumbed down through the quality of entertainment. What the definition of entertainment today is not really what it was before. But again, entertainment has replaced value, has replaced wisdom, has replaced truth, has replaced anything worthwhile. And the new currency is likes. The new currency is again, I said this to you earlier before we started recording, that we're following influencers who may not have anything genuine of value to offer society. Maybe they're just cool. Maybe they're musicians and actors and artists of some sort. And I'm not saying they don't have a level of worth, but in yesterday's economy, they would not have millions of views they have today. We're all susceptible to the scrolling on the phones, because I think as a species, we're all attracted to that. And so again, these tools that we have access to without some level of discipline, Jeremy, they could prove as harmful as they are potentially beneficial.
Yep. You're 100% correct on that. So let's wrap this up. We were talking about trends that are changing, and old institutions are dying. We talked specifically a lot about higher education. Corporations are now not paying as much attention to the higher education degree, but rather what can they train their employees. We talked a little bit about how AI and technology is changing all of this. I'm going to put my thoughts on it this way, and I'll let you button up your final thoughts here. I think it's the greatest time in world history to be alive. We have more opportunity than we've ever had at any time. But like we just said, it's up to us to take care of that. It's up to us what we're going to do with it. And I think the trend that we're going to see over the next 10 to 15 years is there's a certain segment of society that's going to become super, super lazy, super, super fat, do nothing but consume the entertainment. And it's going to be the most extreme version of Instagram society. And then on the other side over here, you're going to have people who, until maybe even the last 2 or 3 years, never felt like they had a shot to compete and actually beat, quote unquote, the system. And today, because of technology, because of the tools, because of the accessibility to information and everything else, some of those people who were on a pathway that we'll say was, middle class and down, will have a pathway to become potentially solopreneur billionaires over the next 5 years. We're going to see more billionaires in the next 5 to 10 years than we've seen at any time in world history. I know we've heard that for the last 20 years, but it is accelerating. That Forbes top 1,000 billionaires list is going to be the top 10,000. And those who don't learn to embrace this, they're probably going to be stuck on universal basic income because they won't have anything much to add to society.
Wow. That's a nice little red bow on top of that one, buddy. You're not wrong, Jeremy. You're not wrong. I've said this before to you, that information, knowledge is power. And that every time there's a new technology, it leads to wealth, because it leads to job creation, and job creation in the right hands leads to wealth. And we've seen it, whether it's in the railways that came, whether it's the simple typewriter that came. Like I said to you before, the phone on our camera has created more photographers than ever before that are professional photographers. So every time there's a new technology, well, even look at the internet. The internet created all sorts of new jobs. So right now, AI, digital asset space, even the cryptocurrency space, but namely blockchain, the capacity to build on the rails of a layer one, let's say. All these new advents will absolutely lead to more jobs, which will lead to wealth. So technology and information and knowledge lead to wealth. So that's what we have in front of us right now. For anyone who wants to participate in this new economy, they're going to thrive. But there's going to be another side of us that says, now I can have the machine do the work for me. I'm going to chill. So you're right. We're going to have a segment of society that prefers to get a check sent from the government. And they're going to gain weight, and they're going to chill, and they're going to hang out, and they're going to be entertained 24/7 a day. The decision is ours to make, right, my friend? Addictions aren't limited to alcohol and drugs alone. That's the truth. We all need a level of discipline. We all need duties and obligations. And although we complain by these, they keep us on a particular path. So the last thing I want to say to that is we're building a community of people that are driven, people that want more, people that want to break the chains of this rat race and learn entrepreneurialism and get some skill sets below them that they can really get out there and kick ass. That's what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. Check us out over at trademaestro.com. Check Nelson and his crew out over at deltachainlabs.com. Like and subscribe. Share with your friends and your family, and give us some comments below. Let us know what you think about this conversation, where things are going, where society's going, what excites you, what scares you, and let's just deepen the conversation. Thanks again. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.